At 99 years old, Mel Brooks has finally stopped pretending. After a lifetime of comedic brilliance, he's no longer afraid to speak openly about the people he couldn't tolerate working with. This isn't the usual Hollywood gossip. No scripted diplomacy, no careful phrasing, no polite avoidance. Brooks is reflecting on a century of memories and calling things exactly what he saw them to be. And when he speaks, the industry listens. What makes this confession so shocking isn't that he dislikes certain actors, it's that he is one of the most celebrated figures in comedy, a man whose work reshaped the genre. So when he says someone didn't fit his world, it isn't just personal preference. It's a judgment on temperament, craft, and the kind of collaborative energy Brooks demanded to make his film sing. Jerry Lewis, a genius too big for Brooks's world. Jerry Lewis was a comic legend, brilliant, unpredictable, and wildly influential. But for Brooks, that influence came with a cost. When the studio suggested Lewis for a major role in a new satirical project in the mid-1980s, Brooks refused instantly. He didn't question Lewis's talent, he questioned whether Lewis could respect the film as a shared creation. Brooks admired the slapstick mastery, but he hated the ego. Lewis was known for rewriting scenes, fighting directors, and dominating every room he entered. Brooks thrived on controlled chaos, but he never surrendered control. One meeting between them sealed the deal. Lewis arrived late, monopolized the conversation, and barely acknowledged Brooks. There was no argument, no public scandal, just a quiet realization that two creative forces couldn't coexist. Brooks concluded, if someone sees themselves as the center of the universe, they can't live in mine. Why Brooks wouldn't work with Lewis? Control versus chaos. Brooks built his films like architecture, structure, rhythm, and ensemble harmony mattered more than any single performer. He believed comedy worked only when everyone understood their place in the machine. Lewis, by contrast, lived for spotlight and improvisation. He didn't just act, he commanded the scene. Brooks understood that working with Lewis would mean constant battles over dialogue, timing, and tone. He didn't need a star who thought he was funnier than the script. He needed actors who served the story, not the ego. Even though Lewis was a comic giant, Brooks saw him as a threat to the carefully crafted rhythm of his films. In Brooks's universe, talent alone was not enough. The actor had to be willing to be part of a team, to be humble enough to play within the system. Lewis could not do that, so Brooks refused. Gene Wilder, the heartbreaking drift of a creative bond. No relationship in Brooks's career cut deeper than his split with Gene Wilder. Wilder wasn't just an actor to Brooks, he was a collaborator, a creative soulmate, and a co-architect of some of the greatest comedies ever made. Their work together felt like lightning, spontaneous, brilliant, and perfectly balanced. Wilder brought emotional vulnerability to Brooks's madness, transforming absurdity into something human. But after Young Frankenstein, their bond began to unravel. Wilder had poured his heart into the project, and Brooks protected it fiercely, insisting on specific choices like black and white filming and a strict tone. When Wilder brought a new script, The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, Brooks declined to produce it. Wilder interpreted that as rejection. He made the film anyway, but the magic was gone. The partnership that once felt effortless had quietly fractured. The silent split. When love turns into distance. The most painful part of Brooks and Wilder's drift wasn't anger, it was silence. There were no public fights, no harsh interviews, no pointed jokes. Just two artists who once shared a creative language, now living separate lives. Brooks described the loss like watching a brother leave home, taking your best punchline with him. When they later crossed paths again, there was no dramatic reunion, only a brief, polite exchange and a fragile reconnection. The trust that had once powered their collaborations was gone. Wilder's departure wasn't just a career move, it was the end of a creative symbiosis. And Brooks never reopened the door for that kind of loss again. He learned to protect his creative circle fiercely, because when the bond breaks, it doesn't just end a relationship, it ruins the rhythm of the work. Chevy Chase. Talent without teamwork. Chevy Chase was the kind of actor studios loved, a major name with instant comedic credibility. But Brooks refused to cast him again and again. Why? Because Chase didn't play as part of a team. He was brilliant, sharp, quick, and perfectly dry, but he also brought a chilling arrogance to the room. Brooks had heard stories about Chase's behavior, about how he could freeze a set with a single sarcastic remark. Brooks believed comedy needed generosity, a willingness to pass the rhythm, to support others, to blend into the ensemble. Chase didn't do that. He didn't move with the comedy. He collided with it. Brooks reportedly said, "He's not performing, he's waiting for everyone else to stop talking so he can remind them he's the smartest guy there." Brooks wanted actors who could lose themselves in the moment. Chase wanted to dominate it. The Dark Helmet Candidate. Why Brooks picked Moranis. Studio executives once suggested Chase for Spaceballs, specifically the role of Dark Helmet. On paper, he fit. But Brooks chose Rick Moranis instead. Why? Because Moranis understood balance. Brooks later said, "Rick knows when to step forward. More importantly, he knows when to step back." That was Brooks's entire philosophy. Comedy was a shared rhythm, and an actor who refused to blend became a liability. Chase could have been a box office draw, but Brooks cared more about creative harmony than celebrity. The result was a film where every actor felt like part of the same world, not a collection of individual stars. Brooks didn't hate Chase. He simply couldn't work with someone who treated comedy like a solo sport. And in Brooks's universe, the ensemble was everything. Harvey Korman. Brilliance with friction. Harvey Korman was a comic force, known for his improv genius and stage command. But Brooks's sets were different, controlled, precise, and carefully timed. Korman's instinct was to bend the script, add new lines, and reshape characters on the fly. Brooks couldn't tolerate that. During High Anxiety, Korman attempted to reinvent his role, adding tangents and improvisation that disrupted the film's rhythm. Brooks refused, insisting, "We already wrote the funny part. We just need you to do it." The tension grew, not into a public argument, but into silent warfare. By the end of the shoot, they barely communicated directly. Yet the film still succeeded because Korman's talent was undeniable. The audience never saw the conflict, but Brooks did. And once he experienced that friction, he quietly removed Korman from his casting list. It wasn't hatred, just a recognition that the partnership wasn't worth the cost. Frank Langella. Too serious for Brooks's chaos. When Brooks began Dracula, dead and loving it, he wanted a Dracula who could be ridiculous and terrifying in the same breath. Frank Langella, however, brought a level of dramatic seriousness that clashed with Brooks's comedic universe. Langella performed like a tragic hero, every line heavy with gravitas. Brooks needed velocity and spontaneity, someone who could fall into a fireplace and make it funny. Langella couldn't loosen up. During rehearsals, Brooks tried to coax him into the absurdity, but Langella remained solemn. When Brooks asked if he wanted to mock the text, Langella replied with sincere confusion. Brooks realized Langella was acting in a different genre. He quietly stepped away from the role, and Brooks replaced him with Leslie Nielsen, an actor who could stay completely straight-faced while the world collapsed into chaos. Brooks didn't dislike Langella, he just couldn't make him fit. Outrow. Brooks's legacy of comedy and control. Mel Brooks's list of actors he couldn't stand isn't a list of enemies. It's a map of what he believed comedy truly required: trust, humility, timing, and an ability to serve the story rather than dominate it. He could tolerate chaos, but only if it was controlled chaos. He could handle big personalities, but not at the expense of the ensemble. In Brooks's world, the comedy wasn't a stage for ego. It was a universe where every performer had a role. That's why he refused to work with geniuses like Lewis, Wilder, Chase, Korman, and Langella. Not because they weren't talented, but because they couldn't live inside his system. And for a man who built laughter like architecture, that mattered more than any name.